He crossed the rail like a bull seeing red, and the next thing I knew, his open palm cracked across my face hard enough to make the microphone squeal. The courtroom sucked all the air out in one long gasp, and before anyone could blink, my body did what it was trained to do. I caught his wrist, turned my hips, and threw a 220-pound police lieutenant clean over the defense table. Wood split paper snowed, somebody swore, and I stood there with blood at my lip and said into the record, steady as ordering coffee, "Self-defense, Your Honor." The gavel hit twice. The bailiff froze mid-step and phones shot up like a field of metal sunflowers, because everyone knew they had just seen something that doesn't happen in polite rooms. My name is Sloan Avery, and before I was the woman who flipped a cop in court, I was a crisis negotiator in Harbor City, North Lake County. If you want to pull a map, the person they sent into kitchens and parking lots and porches when somebody's night had already gone sideways. I learned to read the room, hear the truth hiding under the words, and keep my voice calm even when my pulse was kicking the ribs like a mule. I believed in policy and de-escalation and all the posters we slapped on precinct walls about integrity when no one is watching. And then one winter night in Westbridge, I watched those posters peel themselves off the paint and float to the floor. It wasn't Halloween. It wasn't any day that deserves a costume, just a Thursday so cold the sidewalks wore black ice and sirens sounded softer, like even they didn't want to be outside. By the time we rolled up to a narrow driveway, a 15-year-old kid named Kai Moreno was on the concrete with 13 holes in a sweatshirt his mom had just bought. His phone lay beside him, still streaming a little robotics demo under the porch light, chat messages piling on a live that had outlived him, and 6 feet away stood Lieutenant Carter Hale with his Glock still out, saying it before anyone asked. Kid had a gun, reached for it. The revolver they pointed at belonged in a cop show from the 90s, crusted. 32. Serial scrubbed sloppily so the ghost of the numbers still peeked through. Nothing about it fit the porch, the kid, the camera angle, not the life I saw later on his bedroom wall with science fair ribbons and orbit maps and a sticker that said, "Be curious." And when I pulled video later, my body cam had a clean feed until it didn't. 42 minutes gone, like someone cut a strip out of history with a razor, so I asked who authorized the reboot, and instead of an answer, I got a meeting. Commissioner Alden Price kept his office like a hotel lobby. Warm wood glass corners, a view that made the city look calm and manageable. He had that practiced, tired smile men wear when they want you to believe the world is heavy on their shoulders and you should help them carry it. He told me these cases are complicated. He talked about tinderboxes and narratives and how evidence sometimes gets in the way of peace. He tapped my file with 2 fingers and said softly, "You didn't see what you think you saw for your sake. Forget the noise." I filed the internal complaint anyway. 3 weeks later, the department stamped it unfounded with a rubber thud. 2 days after that, my husband Evan, a detective who still believes systems could heal themselves if you kept telling the truth, didn't make it home. Official story said gang retaliation. Unslept voices said wrong place, wrong time. 6 department casings said something else. And when I dropped my badge on the desk, the sound it made was the exact sound my belief made. Not a crack, not a scream, a dull, clean landing that told me the old life was over. Law school was the quiet version of war fluorescent hum coffee that tasted like a dare. Friends who learned your story without asking for the sad parts, and teachers who gauged your pain by how neatly you stapled exhibits. I passed the bar 2 years to the month after Evan's funeral, and all that grief went somewhere practical. It turned into slow blade patience, into learning when to shut up, when to push, when to make a record that no one could erase without cutting their own hands. And that's the person Kai's mom Lila found when she walked into my shoebox office on Oak and set a plastic robotics trophy and a stack of live stream screenshots on my desk. She asked me if I had been there that night. I said yes, I saw everything. She took a breath that sounded like it had been waiting a year to come out and said, "Then I need you to make them see it too." Back to the day in courtroom 5B smelled like old wood and copier toner. Hale was on the stand, chin high, the kind of posture that dares you to blink first. And I asked him to walk the jury through the missing 42 minutes the transcript reads. Professional. The truth is, my mouth tasted like pennies, and the back of my neck remembered exactly how my body felt walking out of Price's office the first time Hale didn't answer. He stepped down, crossed the rail he wasn't supposed to cross, and hit me. Yeah, that happened. And when the room froze, I didn't think about physics or leverage. I just moved. Bone. Remembers what training teaches it. I planted, turned, lifted, and he flew. The sound of a table breaking in a courtroom is a holy thing. It strips titles off, leaves only weight and wood. I said, Self-defense so clear, the stenographer didn't need me to repeat it. And 20 minutes later, a clip of me tossing a man twice my size had 300,000 views, and rising. People looped it, slowed it, added dumb captions and smart ones. Some laughed because that's how relief comes out. The judge recessed told me to stay in chambers, told the bailiff to restrain the witness, and outside in the hall the uniforms looked at me like I'd spit on a family crest, while the regular folks gave me small nods that said we saw what we saw. You deal with power long enough and you learn its rhythm. Retaliation tends to come in threes: a public humiliation, a personal warning, then a quiet ghost at your door. The second part came fast that night in my building's underground garage. My white pickup burned low and mean. The word snitch scratched into the hood and rewritten by flames. The cameras above the exit were dead, not broken. Cut in the cooling puddle near the front tire, metal glinted a melted key fob. Still stamped K-19 old code for Hale's training squad, and when I crouched by the wheel, well, the brake line winked at me like a snake. Someone had shaved clean. My phone buzzed at my hip. Unknown number 1 sentence delivered in a voice so calm it felt like a job title. Check your brakes next time. Click no breathing, no laugh, just that. And I stood in the chemical half-light and said okay out loud because some words should meet air. I called Jonah Patel, digital investigator. If you need a label to me, he's a locksmith for systems people pretend are sealed. He runs a mirrored server of the city's evidence database from a storage unit behind an indoor soccer field. Portable AC, 3 monitors, a coffee maker from a yard sale. He owes me 2 favors. I never cashed, and I told him it was time to spend one. I also texted Detective Tessa Ward from Internal Affairs. Single mom reputation, like a straight line down a page. She answered with 2 words. You alive? Not a question. And in 30 minutes we were standing shoulder to shoulder in a metal cube, while Jonah's fingers played music on a keyboard. He pulled the body cam registry for K-19 the night Kai died. Activation recorded then an admin override before the first dispatch entry. Not a glitch, not a crash, a deliberate cut and purge from inside the building. He pivoted to another window. Temporary admin credential bouncing through the network like a drunk trying to leave a party without saying goodbye. IP origin, 2 blocks from Price's office. Give me a badge swipe timestamp and I'll tie it to a chair, he said. Tessa made the uncomfortable call, used the part of her badge that still means something. We got the swipe, we got the time, and my jaw did that locked thing you don't notice until later when it hurts to chew. I didn't schedule a confrontation. I staged a conversation that would record itself because sometimes the safest way to keep a secret is to make it public to precisely the right 2 people. The courthouse service elevator is cold on purpose, and the echo tells you when a lie is getting dressed when the black town car rolled in and Price stepped out. His coat looked like it had never seen a wrinkle, and he smiled a soft, tired smile. Ms. Avery, this is not the place. He said it in a tone that had closed 1,000 doors on 1,000 truths. I held up my phone just enough for the glass to catch the light and said, I agree that night wasn't the place either. Let's make a new one right now. He did the speech about equilibrium and gasoline rooms, about narratives and how people need sleep. He said, evidence gets complicated. Administration does what it must for the greater good. And every time he landed on must, his eyes slid off mine, like the word had splinters. I kept my voice even. Who ordered the override? He didn't say me. He poured out phrases in the passive. Authorizations were given. Oversight was applied. Systems were strained. The kind of language that sounds clean unless you've scrubbed blood out of tile. He pivoted to advice. You should be careful. Sloan accidents close loops. And that last word slid across the concrete like ice. My watch hugged my wrist and quietly kept his voice like a jar. Keeps lightning bugs, he left. I waited until the sound of the engine was swallowed by the hum. Then I breathed. Chain of custody is the spine of truth. Tessa brought a sealed evidence envelope to Jonah's unit. We printed logs, badge swipes, network maps. We signed and dated and sealed, and did it all again so no one could say they didn't touch it. I added the watch audio and a timeline so tight it could carry a glass of water without spilling. We walked the packet to Judge Miriam Locke's chambers. She read without interrupting, a gift, then leaned back, looked at the ceiling for a heartbeat and said, Ms. Avery, this file is going into a fan. I'm sealing it and I'm ordering independent verification if it holds. It is bigger than a bad night. And I said, then let it be bigger, because certain sentences walk you to a door and your only job is to turn the knob. The State Bureau of Investigation confirmed the metadata, and the badge swipes by sundown by midnight. Someone at the union office was texting friends in code that read like prayers and threats got married. Hale came back to court with a sling and a lawyer who told him to keep his mouth closed. He didn't nod right away, not when the room pressed in. He talked like a man holding a refrigerator, alone, voice flat, eyes on wood grain. We were told the kid couldn't walk. We'd secure the weapon later. It wasn't the movie confession people fantasize about. It was smaller and therefore heavier, the judge wrote in her leather notebook. Without changing her face, the jury tried not to look shocked and failed, and the blue uniforms in the back row sat like statues that suddenly learned how to swallow. The headlines hit like thunder. Price resigned by noon, didn't make it to his arraignment, found at a boat launch the next day. They wrote apparent suicide. Friends said he loved water. Cynics said water loved him until it didn't. I didn't cheer. I don't cheer for endings that don't look you in the eye. What mattered was the chain reaction. 17 officers walked out in cuffs over the next week. False reports, tampering, intimidation, quiet taps on witnesses outside grocery stores, the kind of petty cruelty that hides behind the word procedure. They looked smaller without the mythology, and small is a fair size for men who kept big lies alive. Hale pled to conspiracy and obstruction, 25 years without parole. The judge's voice didn't rise when she sentenced him. She didn't need volume. This city trusted you, and you used that trust to bury a boy and protect a story. That story ends today. She said it like a door latch settling into place, and I didn't look at him with hate. I didn't have any left to spend. I thought about a porch light making snow look like 1,000 tiny robots landing to do no harm. The settlement came later, big enough for headlines, small enough to feel like a rickety bridge over a canyon. Lila signed, hands shaking. Didn't smile, asked me to make it mean something. So we rented a squat brick building on the corner of 9th and Rowan and filled it with secondhand laptops and soldering irons and a whiteboard scarred with ideas. We called it the Kai Workshop. No marble plaque, no speeches. Just a room where kids who are told to look down could look up. And on day 3, a quiet kid with a crooked grin showed me a little bot that carried a folded note across the table and chirped when it arrived like it was proud, and I swear for a second the air in that room felt like fresh water after a long swim in smoke. You think that's the end because we like endings and clean counters, but a week after we stuffed the ribbon into a drawer. I got an email from Tessa, no subject secure, link. 2 words, new layer. Jonah stood over my shoulder with coffee that could strip paint while the link opened to drone logs. 2 drones over West Bridge the night Kai died. 1 registered to the department, 1 to a private contractor I'd only heard whispered about when City Hall folks drank too fast. Stonebridge Group. The kind of outfit that sells deniability by the hour timestamps nested into the missing 42 minutes like teeth. My throat went dry the way fury goes quiet, and I realized the door we'd kicked open was just the foyer. I'm telling you this the way people tell stories at kitchen tables when the house is finally quiet. The way you keep your voice low because you don't want to wake the past and you don't want to let it go back to sleep either. I can still feel the exact shape of Hale's palm on my cheek from that day, and I can still hear the gavel, and I can still see the faces on both sides of the aisle, one side angry. I broke their little world, the other side relieved. They weren't the only ones shouting at a locked door. I don't get high off the flip. The flip wasn't the win. It was a flare, a spark that lit up what had been there the whole time. People love to call me the woman who tossed a cop, and yeah, that happened. You know what I mean? But the part that matters is the paper, the timestamps, the chain of custody, the decision to say the quiet thing into a microphone on purpose. I didn't become strong that day. I just took the strength I had built slowly. 1 refusal at a time. 1 document at a time. 1 I'm still here at a time. And let the room see it. Harbor City hasn't turned into a postcard. It's still itself. Sirens still mean different things on different blocks. But there are nights when the sound drifts by, and it doesn't feel like a warning. It feels like motion. And outside the workshop windows, kids lean over laptops and argue about code and laugh, the kind of laugh that doesn't look over its shoulder. And I keep writing names in a notebook and tucking receipts in envelopes and tapping my watch before I walk into rooms that smell like old power. Because some habits keep you alive, and somewhere in a server closet, a set of logs is waiting to be printed and signed and walked into the light. If you've been the person the room underestimated, if you got called dramatic or disloyal until those words ran out because you didn't break, I see you if you've watched a uniform or a title or a club get protected while the truth took a beating. I see that too. Drop where you're watching from. Tell me where you think the line sits between order and justice. Tell me what you've seen when cameras weren't rolling and what it cost to stand up. Argue with me if you need to. I can take it. Share this. If you believe silence isn't strategy, subscribe. If you want to see what we pull from that second drone, justice isn't a verdict, it's a process. I'm still here for it. Are you?